Barry Sheerman, you're elected in 1979. You're Labour's longest continuously serving MP. Why have you had enough?
I haven't really. I'm still very vigorous. I'm a social entrepreneur. And of course, I got elected in '79 and faced all those years in opposition. In fact, Jim Callaghan used to call us his lost boys, the people who came in '79, because we had to wait so long to get a Labour government. So, you know, all those years, 18 years in opposition, I became a social enterprise entrepreneur. I started worker co-ops. I actually started those when I was at university in Wales. So I like cooperation, starting things. When I was a kid, I started running jazz concerts, and I started a folk club. And, you know, I had a kind of interesting history. You know, went to posh grammar school, Hampton School. It was very posh, and you know, I had to work on a Saturday morning, so when they played sport, so I dropped out at 16, 17 and went into the paint industry, worked for Eyesight Paints. So, 3 or 4 years in industry. And of course that made me, you know, see the world in a very, very different way. And gave me lots of opportunities, because I met a really rather nice girl that I'd been at primary school with. She thought I should get back to education. And a couple of nice guys in the paint factory said you should get an education. So I did A-levels in a year, sold my Lambretta scooter, yeah, started a painting and decorating business. When I got to the LSE, I kept it on, and this guy came up to me one day and said, "Hey, you owe good money in the vacation. Can I work with you painting and decorating?" And that was Bob Kilroy Silk.
Gosh.
It was, I keep quiet these days, he was my best man.
Fascinating.
So I've had quite a history of doing stuff before I got into Parliament. So I like doing stuff, getting people together, getting a few people to plot and plan and say, can we really make a difference here? You know, one of the first things I did, I'd been involved in a really bad traffic accident, you know, coming back from my one of my daughter's baptisms. You know, a guy ran into us on the, you know, head on the road back to Swansea from Sunbury-on-Thames, and I never forgot that I was saved by the seatbelts. And so when I got in Parliament, they, you know, voted it down 13 times. Gosh. So I got a private member's bill, my only private member's bill, which banned children from being carried in cars unrestrained. Ken Clarke, the junior transport minister, thought he'd buy me off and said, yeah, I'll amend the bill with that. He thought he'd put me off, and I then finagled a vote on a Lord's amendment on adult seatbelts. And the night before the royal wedding, we kept our troops there, and they didn't. And, you know, I think we saved lots of lives.
So we have you to thank for seatbelts?
Yeah, yeah. I had a wonderful, I've always kept that interest. People say, why are you interested in road safety? You know, because I now chair global legislators for road safety. It's the biggest killer of children and young people in the world, bigger than any epidemic. So I work for global road safety with the World Bank. I chair global legislators for road safety with the WHO. And, you know, it's, once I get a campaign, I put it on the back burner if it's ticking over nicely, and then I take the next one. I help lead the campaign for the ban on public smoking in public places. You know, largely around children. I'm pretty obsessed with children. You know, I have 3 daughters, a son, 12 grandchildren, and what got me into politics really is. Everything that happened to me was wonderful. You know, I got to the London School of Economics. I did well. I did postgraduate. I became a young university teacher. Finished up head of American Studies at Swansea University. Everything was perfect, and then our first baby died at birth. And you know, sometimes those dreadful blows give you something to reflect on your life. Do you want to do this? And I thought to myself, and you. Very often in that situation, the man is the strong partner, if there are any decency at all. But after that, when we really come to the worst, looking back, I was into some depression. You know, I had no energy. My wife was worried about me, conned me into going to the university doctor, who said, gave me a total check and said, nothing wrong with you, Barry, but a man that loses a child, as well as a woman, goes through something like this. And you know, it was both a crushing blow, but, you know, I don't want to teach politics and economics anymore. I want to do it. I want to change the world. So that's how so that's why I've loved doing the job.
Gosh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry to hear about that.
But a year after we lost our first little baby, we had a healthy daughter, and then, you know, all these children.
All these children. All these children. When I was preparing for this, I just thought, my goodness, you have seen so much of our politics being elected in 1979. And I just was really interested in getting your perspective on how things have changed. So let me start by asking you, how have MPs changed in the 41 years that you have been in Parliament? I'm talking about, I suppose, class, gender, ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, so much of the intake into politics has changed, and for the better. You know, obviously more women, more diversity generally. Still a large number of quite posh people, white men. I worry sometimes about a lot of people that were coming into politics in those days. When I was first there were people like Dennis Healey, who stood on the beaches, you know, when we took back Europe. He'd stood as a beach captain, you know. Yeah. And the major, but, you know, in charge of Dennis Healey, and people that had been, you know, in the war. Harold Wilson, I mean, was one of the guys that running the war effort behind the scenes. You know, the cleverest man Oxford had ever seen, the youngest professor ever in Oxford, and here was this young guy from Huddersfield, but, you know, he did that in the war. By the time he got into Parliament, you know. Quite extraordinary that, you know, some sort of really giants of men. Callaghan, all that experience Callaghan had in the Navy and all those jobs he'd done. So there were a lot of people with very senior experience, but also experience of what happens when, you know, ghastly regimes of the left or right got into power and, you know, misused it as they did, of course, we knew across Europe. And I was so lucky because when I was at the LSE, all my tutors were the big players, you know, really serious people. And one of the things that inspired me, I was taught by Michael Oakeshott. You know, this Cambridge professor who'd said, you know, it's wonderful with rationalism in politics, that, you know, the danger to democracy was from extremism on the left, extremism on the right. The human beings did best by edging forward cautiously, and he called it the pursuit of intimations. And I've always loved that.
By implication, do you think there's too many members of the political class? We know who we're talking about, people who go to university, work for one of the parties as researchers or press officers, basically never had a real job.
There is an imbalance. I think a lot of people now are, you know, would think, do I really want to go into Parliament? And of course, things have changed in terms of social media and the exposure you get and the unpleasantness you get and the threats and, you know, it's a quite tough job. And, you know, David Amos was a good friend of mine, a great parliamentarian, a lovely man. My next door neighbour was Jo Cox, and she was a family friend as well, close friend of my daughter. And, you know, it has become quite a worry about, you know, MP security, the amount of abuse they get. You know, there was a higher level of respect for the job of politician and parliamentarian when I first came in.
I suppose, I'm not questioning your history, but I suppose that also there was the Brighton bomb, you know, where, you know, Margaret Thatcher, frankly, was nearly murdered.
Yeah.
Norman Tebbett's wife.
Yeah. Well,
so is the threat to MPs, has it changed? Is it more commonplace? Whereas it's not just members of the government now, it's just all of you are sort of fair game.
Yeah, I think it's more a fair game for more people. I mean, I lived through the Irish terrorism period. I was Roy Hattersley's deputy on the front bench, dealing with the Guildford Four and the Birmingham Six and all that. And of course, we lived in where special conferences had to be in London one year, and every pub was wire netted, and the height of the IRA, as you know, MPs were killed. Yeah. A restaurant I regularly went to just across the road from Parliament, a bomb was placed there and killed MPs who were in that restaurant. So we all knew a much higher level of. I used to go to the United States and see their laxness of their, in government buildings, and we, of course, with terrorism, had learnt to live with it, and it became part of the. You'd accept that's part of the. It's a different threat today. It's a different threat. There is more sort of a randomness about it.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. So you enter Parliament to the first woman Prime Minister this country has ever had. Did politicians treat her differently because she was a woman?
Yeah, I think they did. She was a phenomenon. I liked Margaret Thatcher. I got on well with Margaret Thatcher. And you build a relationship. She knew that if I like question time. I can remember she suffered from what sometimes you notice some people that if they are under pressure, they have a kind of a pink sort of glow coming up. And if you got her, you would see it. You actually couldn't disguise it. And I got her once on Prime Minister's Question Time, and she joked about it afterwards. She said, "You really got me there, Barry." But yeah, she was. I didn't agree with her principles, but she was a phenomenal woman, and just to watch her in operation and the way in which she took over the Conservative Party, which is not the most female-friendly organisation in the world. There she was, and that wonderful rivalry between her and Ted Heath, who always used to stand in the same position and would stand up, and you knew that hostility and between the two of them because she dumped him.
Is she the most phenomenal Prime Minister that you have witnessed in your time in Parliament?
Well, Harold Wilson was before my time, although I knew Harold.
During your time in Parliament?
Well, because I was from Huddersfield, I knew Harold at the end, but he was not the man he used to be. Yes, she was the most phenomenal. I spoke at her when she died. I spoke in Parliament about her, and a lot of people thought what I said about her was very thoughtful. And I was invited to her funeral in St Paul's, which was a nice thing to happen. And I genuinely said, this was one you could disagree with, but my goodness, she knew what being Prime Minister was.
How has the job changed? By which I mean, I read that there weren't constituency surgeries in 1979 when you'd have got elected. That is that right?
There was some very old-fashioned practice. When I was a young MP, I went into the post office, and there was a very famous Welsh, long-serving Welsh MP throwing all his mail into a wastepaper basket. I said, "What are you doing?" I opened. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I never answer letters. It only encourages them." And I mean, he wasn't typical. He wasn't typical. But there was a different feeling. And also a more traditional attitude to what an MP does. When I was a social scientist, I got in, I looked at this prosperous Huddersfield manufacturing town, And because I was an economist, I could see manufacturing employment was going to plunge, that all sorts of things that have brought wealth and excellence to that famous town, and we're going to go. And what was I going to do about good jobs, new jobs, make something happen?
So when did constituency surgery start?
I think they were always there.
Yeah.
They were, I remember when I lived in Wales, my local Labour MP had one every 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, you know,
Yes.
very reverential.
Yeah.
Very difficult to see the MP, such busy people.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you know, I'm an odd one because I tweet a lot. I tweet in the morning. I start with Farming Today, and you know, the people that follow me say, "Barry, where were you if I haven't commented in Farming on Today and the Today programme?"
And just finally on our history lesson. So just on the Labour Party. So you obviously were there during Jeremy Corbyn when the Labour Party was in civil war. I can testify that, but I think it's pretty much common knowledge. But also during the militant, when the Labour Party was in a civil war in the late 70s, in fact.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I was at a meeting recently of Labour MPs, and someone said, of course, when Tony Blair got in, he sorted militant out. And I said, really? Really? I was there. And it was Roy Hattersley, Gerald Kaufman. It was a whole band of us, you know, working together. You know, John Smith, and the hammer of the left,
Yes.
Our friend from the trade union movement, that you know, knew every move they had and counter. We had a team that was formidable, and you know, when I said, look, when we sorted militant out that first time, we knew that when we started Solidarity and took them on, that you could take no hostages. You had to do it because you were a democratic socialist party, and these people weren't democratic socialists. They believe in the Trotskyist entryism, getting into a democratic party and taking it in from the inside. I've always hated that. I've always got on well with people from the Communist Party because they had their own party and their own agenda, and you knew what that agenda was. But the Trots, as a democratic socialist, no, we chucked the Marxist wing of the party out in 1890, you know. And there was part of my mission was always to keep us. I'm a Christian socialist. I'm a Fabian. You know, I'm right there. You know, and I can remember the wonderful days when you'd go to your constituency party on a Friday night, and there'd be a warm glow because everybody there believed in Labour, wanted to work together, enjoy life together, and you know. It was fun to do. I hated it when people came in and said, this is only about resolutions and whether we're going to have the perfect left-wing policies tomorrow.
Yeah. What will you miss most when you stand down?
The ability to raise issues, you know, to do what I do. That's what I miss, the ability to say, there's a wrong out there and we're going to put it right, and we can do it, working together.
Very final question, one word answer. The tea room. I miss that. It's great caff. Only MPs can use it. What's your favourite dish in the MP's tea room?
My favourite dish?
Yeah.
Scrambled eggs.
OK, Barry Sheerman, Parliament's going to miss you. Thank you for sharing with us what you have seen over 41 years in Parliament.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.